Hey, what's up guys? IAQ Josh here on site in West Palm Beach, where today we are going to be performing a post-remediation verification, also known as a PRV. There was a remediation service that was performed here at this property. The remediation contractor and the homeowner have both reached out to me saying that everything is ready to go and they want to get us in for that independent verification. So that's what we're doing today. Alright, so now walking up to our work area, everything looks pretty good. We've got our posted danger sign, we've got seals all over, we've got a zipper in place. Alright guys, so one of the first things that I like to do when I'm performing a post-remediation verification is I want to walk through only with a flashlight. I'm using these two eyes here before I'm going to pull out any sampling pumps, any sampling instrumentation. I want to do a visual inspection of the area, and I just want to make sure that we have a clean environment that is suitable for a post-remediation verification. Alright, so let's kick our flashlight on. So as we walk around within this containment area, I'm looking for a number of things. Right off the bat, when we first inspected this property, we had this similar door jamb that you see here, and we had a piece of drywall that was actually wedged in there, and it looks like it was simply cut to the edge of the door trim. So needless to say, we rescheduled, we came back out, and here we are again, round two, performing our visual inspection. So we're obviously going to see a number of things which shouldn't necessarily alarm you. We've got some rust and some corrosion to the wall studs themselves. That's something that you really can't get around if you have water damage inside of a property and you do have these metal studs. That's unfortunately going to happen. But as we take a look around, we're looking for anything and everything out of the ordinary, and the remediator did a very good job sealing off the attic access, so there's little to no communication going on there. We got yet another area that could see some improvement. As far as pass or fail on a post-remediation verification, this isn't going to be the difference for that. Again, this is just making sure that we are in fact blocking out those sewer gases, and in this case it doesn't look like that would be a suitable seal to block out the sewer gases. Now walking around this containment area, visually it looks good and we can move on to the next step. Alright, so what we're going to go ahead and do next is set up our bioaerosol sampling pump. So we're going to get this puppy set up on a tripod. Alright, so now even though we are using our primary calibrator or primary standard every morning to go ahead and calibrate these Buck BioAir pumps, we still always want to confirm that nothing has really changed between the time of departure from our residence or our office to the time of arrival to a property. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and hit that calibrate button. We've got our calibration rotometer here, and now we are showing about 15 liters per minute, which is spot on. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to hit this calibration button once again and go ahead and start our sampling pump with our sample. Alright, so now we're ready to run our 10-minute sample. So we're going to go ahead and hit that 10-minute button. I run 10-minute samples because I want to give the environment every chance to aerosolize any and every mold spore that may be present in here. So now while we've got the pump going here in the background, we know that we got 10 minutes to kill, for lack of a better expression. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is I'll collect my temperature, relative humidity readings. Relative humidity in here is about 45%, temperature is about 82 degrees. That's A-okay in my book. Alright, so just like we did within the containment area, we are now pulling a second bioaerosol sample, or as we commonly call air sample, just outside of the containment area. This is going to be used for background information, just to see if potentially we brought something into that contained workspace when we first entered. Alright, so one of the initial methods that we use to confirm cleanliness or surface verification of cleanliness is going to be ATP. So we will actually procure 1 to 2, sometimes 3 or 4 ATP surface swab samples, and ultimately we're just looking to make sure that all of these numbers are within a suitable threshold. And then what will tend to happen is we will take the area that has the highest ATP reading, and we will then procure a surface sample, whether it's a tape lift or an actual swab sample, and then send that off to the laboratory and confirm whether or not that that presence of ATP is in fact mold. We just took an ATP swab off of the base of this wood here, and if you remember, I previously told you this actually had a door jamb in here that did have some mold growth behind it, and lo and behold, we pulled a 60. And now hopefully the next ATP swab that we procure will come back with just as low of a number here, and then we'll be in good shape. All right, so we just pulled our second ATP swab, and my goodness, I am pleased to present we pulled a single digit number here, a 7 RLU. So I am quite pleased with these numbers, so I'm going to go ahead and still procure another swab sample that's going to be submitted to the laboratory in one of these two areas, and we will just confirm that our mold and fungi counts are within acceptable tolerances. All right, guys, so now let's get into the reporting side of things. As you'll see here on the screen in front of us, we've got the post-remediation verification, or PRV report, that I've already gone ahead and put together correlating to this job. We've got the first section, which is where I immediately like to call to action whether or not the remediation contractor, or the work specifically, has passed or failed the verification process. Below that, we've got the client information as well as the details of the service that we're performing. These are pretty straightforward, so I'll kind of just glaze through these. The notes section is an area where we like to include the link to the company cam file, similar to Dropbox and Google Drive out there, but explicitly for photos. This company cam file will provide all of the images that were taken during the time frame that we are on site to perform the service. We'll also make mention within this notes sections of any pertinent information. In this case, a preliminary PRV was performed on a prior date that was geared to fail our verification process, and as a courtesy, we simply offered a rescheduling option to the remediation contractor as well as the client. So moving along, we've got a table of contents on our second page. And now over on our third page here, we're going through the property conditions. This is where we are going to reference the outdoor ambient conditions, the indoor ambient conditions, as well as a brief description of the remediated areas. Since we all know that a lot of times these assessment reports or post-remediation verification reports will ultimately make it into the hands of a new prospective buyer down the road, I personally like to highlight the specific areas where I performed my service. Now moving along to the next section on page 4, underneath purpose and observations, the purpose section is where we describe exactly what we were hired to actually perform. Observations, pretty self-explanatory, but as you can see here, what I like to do is I like to reference the area. In this case, it's the containment area, so it's pretty easy to identify from the rest of the home, and a brief description of what I found. In this case, as you guys saw earlier, I took ATP readings. These numbers came back nice and low, so I made reference to that. Also within the containment area, I've made reference that the machinery was off upon arrival, but I also put a disclaimer in there saying that this was perfectly acceptable, just so it doesn't seem like the remediation contractor did anything wrong on their part. You also see another observation here mentioned below, but let's move along to the sampling and interpretation. Getting into the sampling and interpretation part of the report here, I'll briefly describe what our calibration methods are, and then immediately following that, we get into the air samples. I like to highlight the location in which this was performed, as well as the type of pump, the sample volume, the volume ID, of course we need that for the chain of custody, and also the concentration. And on this next page we get into the surface samples, where you guys actually saw me go ahead and procure 2 ATP samples as well as 1 fungi sample that was sent off to the laboratory, and as you can see 1, 2, and 3 here reference just that. Now on the next page here we get into the sample results, and then most importantly what our interpretation of these sample results are. So in this case I've referenced the fact that the containment area shows what I consider to be normal levels of mold and fungi spores within the sampled area. Equally, I've also found that the procured surface samples also reported normal levels of mold and fungi spores present. So then we get into the conclusion here, which is basically a synopsis on all of our findings as well as any considerations. So in this case, I've considered this to successfully pass the post-remediation verification process, and I've elected to provide them with some information, notifying them that they are now able to move on to the next phase. As with everything in life, I went ahead and included a limitations section within our report here. This highlights the factors that we can be held accountable to, as well as those that we cannot
be held accountable to. So this is a very important piece of information that we include in all of our reports. Moving along to page 9, we've got the references section. I use a combination of 7 different references to assist me in putting together these reports. So this next part of my report is going to reference the laboratory results. So as you'll see, I have a placeholder on page 10 stating that this is Appendix A and the laboratory results are to follow. As you'll see on the right side here, I've got the air analysis or the results for the spore trap samples that were procured at this property. We've got the one that was taken within the hallway that we use for background information, as well as the one sample that was taken within the bathroom. And finally, we're at the last page of our report. This is the laboratory analysis for the surface sample that was procured from that wooden stud. And that's about it when it comes to the reporting side of things. All right, guys, so I hope you had fun on that pretty straightforward post-remediation verification, as well as the putting together of the PRV report. If you liked, loved, or were ecstatic about this video, please go ahead and hit that great big thumbs up. I do appreciate that. And if you want to see more videos just like this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for future videos. Until the next time.